Well, welcome everyone to another episode of Heat Treat Radio. I'm your host, Doug Glenn. I'm the publisher and founder of Heat Treat Today. You can find out more about Heat Treat Today at www.heattreattoday.com. Assuming you're listening on some podcast platform, that's where you would go back to our website. Today, we're going to be talking about cybersecurity and how it impacts both captive and commercial heat treaters. And I want to thank our sponsors for today's episode, which is Bluestreak Throughput Consulting. They are award-winning providers of quality management systems and manufacturing execution systems. That's QMS and MES. They're also CMMC 2.0 registered practitioner organization. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Basically, that's cybersecurity related things which they're going to be focusing in. We'll be focusing in on CMMC 2.0 and NIST 800-171. More on that later. However, you can find out more about Bluestreak Throughput by going to the web at www.go-bluestreak.com. You can get more information there. Also, before we jump into today's episode, I do want to remind everybody about Heat Treat Today's upcoming Heat Treat Boot Camp, which is going to be held in Pittsburgh from September 23 to 25. And this is the place where if you're a beginner or an up-and-comer in the industry, you can get 2+ years, maybe even more than that, of industry knowledge about markets, materials, products, processes, and players. You can learn all about that stuff in 2 days by coming to this event. And I want to thank our title sponsors for that, which is Aerospace Testing and Pyrometry, which is atp-cal.com on the web, and also Control Concepts, Inc., which is another one of our title sponsors for the boot camp. They're at ccipower.com. So thanks to both of them. And you can find out more information about boot camp simply by going to heattreatbootcamp.com. So with that said, I would like to introduce our speaker today, who is Joe Coleman. Joe is the cybersecurity officer at Bluestreak Compliance, which is a division of Bluestreak, Bright AM. Joe has over 35 years of diverse manufacturing and engineering experience. His background includes extensive training in cybersecurity, a career as a machinist, machining manager, and an early additive manufacturing pioneer. Joe will be speaking at Furnaces North America this year, which is pretty nice. And he's going to be speaking on the impending impact of CMMC 2.0 on the Metal Treating Institute. So that should be pretty interesting. Joe has published over 12 columns in Heat Treat Today over the last couple of years. Also, here's a 4-page PDF of cybersecurity acronyms. And Joe tells me that this actually needs to be updated and added to, so it may be more than 4 pages by the time you get to it. So, all that to say, Joe, welcome to Heat Treat Radio. Glad you're joining us.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
All right, let's jump in, because cybersecurity, while it's not unique to heat treaters, right? It's all across all manufacturing sectors, not even just manufacturing, everything. There are some unique elements of it that tie into the Metal Treating Institute. So to the Metal Treating industry. So let's start with some basic, definitions for those who don't know. What is CMMC, and what's the purpose?
Okay, so CMMC stands for Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification, and we're currently on version 2.0. It's a verification program to ensure that defense contractors and subcontractors are able to protect sensitive information from the DoD, Department of Defense. And that includes FCI, which is federal contract information, and CUI, or some people call it CUI, controlled and classified information. It's going to affect about 300,000 companies in the US. And it's going to start impacting companies later this year or early next year. That's when it's said to be fully released, and they'll start adding it to contracts and RFQs, things like that.
Asking companies, do you comply with CMMC 2.0 or whatever?
Well, it'll say you must comply with
Right, right.
CMMC and a certain level. There's 3 levels.
Okay, which we will get to. So what are these? What are the requirements based on? What?
They are based on well, DFARS 252.204-7012 was implemented on in 2016, and they were saying that people must be NIST 800-171 compliant by December 2017. So if you're not, you're way behind the ball. They just haven't pushed it until lately. Now they're really pushing it. So it's based on NIST 800-171 recommendations, that's Rev 2, and a subset of NIST 800-172. That's what it's based off of.
Okay. So you mentioned DFARS.
Uh-huh.
Can you just briefly, what is that? What does that say? It's DFARS, I assume, right?
DFARS is Defense Federal Acquisition Regulation Supplement.
Okay. Okay. So and again, I'm just kind of curious about this. Who's actually pushing it? Is it the Defense Department, or is it government in general, or is it controlled by kind of like NADCAP and things of that sort, by an independent organization outside of the federal government?
No, CMMC, it does cover other things, but it's mostly by the DoD. They are the ones pushing it.
The DoD. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
because of foreign adversaries stealing our information and
Right.
ransomware attacks, things like that.
Right. Right. Okay. So that's CMMC 2.0. How about it seems like NIST 800-171 is a sub part of that, or is NIST 800-171 something different?
That's something different.
Okay.
NIST 800-171 is published by the National Institute of Standards and Technologies.
Right.
DoD doesn't have a lot to do with NIST. So they are
Okay.
two different. They're just borrowing NIST 800-171 for CMMC.
I see. All right.
The requirements.
So they're using NIST's package that's already there.
Yes.
As part of their requirement. Okay.
Correct.
And then what started the push? I think you've already kind of hit on it, but let's just be explicit about it. What started the push by the DoD to require CMMC or require any type of enhanced security?
The DoD finally realized just how vulnerable defense contractors are, and their systems, their computer systems, their networks, with cyber attacks, sensitive information being leaked by DoD or contractors, that kind of thing. So they're trying to pull everything together to improve national security and to help secure this data, this important data.
So I mean, in a sense, it's really the DoD just trying to cover their rear end, so to speak, and protect sensitive national defense type information.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, and then we talked about DFARS briefly. What is this? I've heard it mentioned about a DFARS interim rule.
Yeah,
what is that?
That came about in November of 2020, and it plays along with the DFARS 7012, 252.204-7012. So they came up with 3 new clauses to improve how cybersecurity is handled and enforced. So the first one is clause 252.204-7019. And what it does is it mandates that when you do your assessment, you come up with an assessment score. And that assessment score is based on 110 controls, and your score can be from a positive 110, perfect score, to a negative 203. Yeah. And that score needs to be turned into the SPRS, the Supplier Performance Risk System. So other companies can see what your score is. So that mandates 7019 mandates that you do turn in your score. And it can be no older than 3 years old. And that they are requesting that if they say your DFAR is required on a contract, things like that, you need to be NIST 800-171 compliant. The next one is 252.204/7020, and what that one states is that you have to give full access to your company, your internet system, your IT, all of your information, and your employees. If they decide to come in and do a medium or a high assessment or just an audit, you will have to turn over that control to them to come in.
Who is them in this case, by the way?
It'd be a DoD official.
DoD. Okay. All right.
So there are 3 different levels of assessments that can be done. There is a basic level, which you attest yourself. It's all self-attestation for NIST 800-171. There is a crap.
Medium level?
There's a medium level,
Yeah.
which means you have to have a DoD official come in and do your final assessment.
Okay.
And then there's a high, which
Yeah.
you also need a DoD official to come in and do that. So the majority of them are basics,
Yeah.
which you can self-attest to.
Yeah. Yeah. So how does a person know, how does a company know if they need to even have the CMMC?
So if you're a company, if you're a defense contractor, a subcontractor, a vendor, supplier, if you're in the DIB or the Defense Industrial Base, you will need to be compliant if you process, store, or transmit or handle FCI in any way or CUI in any way. So if you handle CUI or FCI, you must become CMMC certified at one level or another.
Okay, so let's just take an example. Let's say I'm almost like third tier down in a supply chain. The guy I'm doing business for is obviously doing defense work.
Mm-hmm.
Do I need to be CMMC certified at that point?
Yes.
Even on the basic level?
Well, it depends on what material, what type of data you're handling.
Okay.
There is a flow down process. So it starts with the prime contractor, then it
Yep.
goes to the contractor, and then on down the line. And if you are seeing CUI or dealing with it or FCI, you need to have that same certification level as your customer or as your contractor.
Would my customer in that case, the person I'm doing business with, would it be incumbent upon them to tell me that I am dealing with CFI or CUI?
Yes.
Okay, so
it
to a
would
certain
be in your
extent.
contract.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, and I assume if there's questions, if someone listening has a specific question about whether they're, I want to say eligible, but if they're required, right? If they're required, I'm sure they could contact you and you could probably help them on that just to make sure.
Anytime.
Right.
I also have
Okay.
an ebook that I made that is ready to be sent out, so I can always send them a free copy of that.
Okay. Okay. Now, I think you've already answered this question, but how many maturity levels are in CMMC and what are they? I think we've already hit upon that.
A little. There are 3 levels. There is level 1, which is the foundational level, and that is for contractors or vendors or suppliers that deal with only FCI, Federal Contract Information. They do not deal with CUI. So it's a much smaller set of requirements for level 1. And that's about 60% of the 300,000 will be going for level 1. Then there's level 2, which is advanced, and that is for contractors and vendors and suppliers that deal with CUI in any way. It can come in. It can come in an email and leave. But as long as they have CUI, they have access to it. They need to be at least a level 2 certification, and that is about 80,000 companies are going to be impacted by that. 80,000 out of the 300,000. Level 3 is expert, and level 3 is based on the 110 controls in NIST 800-171, plus a subset of controls that are in 800-172. Level 2 mirrors NIST 800-171. So it's borrowing all the requirements from NIST 800-171, enhancing them a little bit, and putting them into CMMC. So there's a few more hoops you got to jump through to be CMMC certified.
Yeah. Okay. So there may be a little bit of confusion because there's a little foggy in my mind on this. We've talked about two different sets of levels. We talked about a basic, medium, and can't remember
High.
what we high.
Yeah.
And then we talked about level 1, 2, and 3. Are these
Yeah.
things the same, or are they
No.
okay? Can you help me understand
Sure.
the difference between those?
The basic, medium, and high, that's an assessment level that
Okay.
assesses your whole system and your facility.
Gotcha.
And that's based on NIST 800-171.
Okay.
CMMC, you have 3 different maturity levels, and that's the level 1, level 2, level 3.
And that shows when you say maturity levels, that shows the degree to which your company has gone to implement these things.
Yes,
Okay, and it's a certification of some sort, right?
it is a certification, yes.
Where the other one's just either a self-assessment or a DoD assessment of some sort.
Now you can have on level 1, you can self-attest your own certification on level 1. Level 2 and level 3, you will have to have, it's called a C3PAO, or a CMMC third-party assessment organization. They will have to come in and do your final assessment. Bluestreak Compliance can take you all the way to that assessment, audit ready, but then you'll have to have a C3PAO come in and do the final edit and the certification on level 2.
Okay, that was going to be one of my questions because you guys mentioned that you're a what is the wording you gave to me? Registered practitioner organization. You don't actually do the assessments though, but you can get everybody up to the door, right? You prepare them
Yes.
for it.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
You would need a CMMC assessor to do that, a certified assessor.
Okay. All right. All right. And you said the time frame again, when is all this going to be? Right now it's not required, but it will be required.
CMMC is not required currently. It's in the last phase of being released of approval. So either late this year or early next year, it's going to be a phased rollout. So later this year, early next year, you're going to have phase 1, which is if you need to be a level 1, you will need to become certified right away. The one you can self-attest to. 6 months after that, they're going to start requiring that CMMC level 2 is implemented, which means you'll have to go through the process of getting a C3PAO, and that's when it comes time to hire an RPO, Registered Practitioner Organization, because they've got the training and the certification to get you there. Now, one thing on the C3PAO is currently there are only 54 C3PAOs in the entire country. So there's going to be a huge backlog. You could be talking a year backlog. So plan accordingly. And in level 3 also needs to have, that's kind of an enhanced version of level 2. It has more requirements. That also requires a C3PAO for certification.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That's great. All right. What I want to do right now, Joe, is I want to take a little break. Want to hear a little 1-minute video clip from one of our actually not the sponsor of this episode, but one of their customers, a little testimonial from a gentleman by the name of Lamar Dade at East Carolina heat treat and that
Metal
might not be
treating.
exactly East Carolina heat treat and Virginia metal treating, about actually the use of your system. So let's take a listen to that, and then we'll come back and talk about what's involved in becoming becoming CMMC certified. So let's take a listen.
My name is Lamar Dade. I am the documentation controller at East Carolina Metal Treating and Virginia Metal Treating. And I'm also the Bluestreak liaison for both locations for both Bluestreak's QMS, MES, and compliance. So East Carolina Metal Treating and Virginia Metal Treating, we handle metal heat treating at both locations. So my overall experience with Bluestreak Compliance for CMMC and NIST has been absolutely phenomenal. Everything at our fingertips and ready to roll, especially with combining both facilities in the one project. It's been an amazing tool for both locations when it comes to quality with internal and external audits. Helps us give full visibility when it comes to our production and our day-to-day operations. If you are looking to become CMMC or NIST compliant, or just need a QMS MES customer support, Bluestreak is your way to go.
All right, so Joe, let's talk for a second about the process, if you will. What's involved in becoming CMMC certified?
Okay, well that all depends on if you are NIST 800-171 compliant already.
Okay. Yeah.
If you are not NIST compliant already, you need to get NIST compliant as soon as possible.
Okay.
That has a big impact on your CMMC implementation.
Okay. Well, let's start. Can you address that then? And then we can maybe go back and talk CMC. What does it come to? What do you have to do to get NIST?
Okay, NIST, to become NIST compliant, you have to do an assessment on your network and your facilities to come up with an assessment score. So it's the same as CMMC. Then you will have to you'll do a gap analysis. You will come up with a POAM list or a plan of action and milestones. That is your to-do list. That's what you need to do based off of your assessment, your shortcomings, or what you're not compliant to. You'll need to come up with a system security plan or an SSP. That's mandatory. You cannot be compliant without an SSP. Once you get your SSP and your POAM list, then you need to take your score, your beginning score, baseline score, and submit that to the SPRS. And that is the library that holds all of the scores and shows your level. From there, once you get that, then you start remediating and implementing your POAM list. So that also includes coming up with policies and procedures, plans, a lot of documentation on everything gets documented, but a lot of documentation based on where you stand and where you're going. Until at the end, when you do your final score. Now, the SSP is a living document. It's going to constantly change. It's a living document. If you have a change in your network, a major change, you'll need to go in and update that right away.
Right. So that's how you get to be NIST compliant. And then how about CMMC? Is there more to it than that for CMMC?
There's a few more requirements in CMMC, but the major difference is with NIST 800-171, it's all self-attestation.
Yeah.
CMMC, you will need to use a C3PAO.
Okay. Yeah. Somebody need an outside validator, so to speak.
And they're very expensive. Now, another reason they came up with CMMC is because people were saying that they were compliant to NIST 800-171, and they really weren't.
Yeah. Okay.
And if that comes into the False Claims Act and things like that, they really go after people that do that.
Yeah. Any sense of the time frame of either becoming NIST compliant and or CMMC compliant?
Yeah. So if you are not NIST compliant yet, that can take up to 6 to 12 months. I've seen it more. You can do CMMC and NIST together if you need to, because you're using the same documents. That can take, if you're not NIST compliant, that can take up to 18 months or more. So if you are NIST compliant already, you're talking another 6 to 12 months to be CMMC certified.
Okay. Can you, and you just alluded to it, but I just want to make clear, can you do them both at the same time in parallel tracks, or?
Yes. Yeah, I'm
Okay.
working with customers that I do that. They're currently not NIST compliant, so we're just rolling it into one using the same documents.
Yeah.
It's just that we'll have to have a different assessor at the end.
Okay. So hypothetical here. So let's say a company, maybe two different angles here. Let's say a company just decides they're not going to be either NIST or CMMC compliant. No, I mean, in one sense, no problem. You can still be a company, right? But
Oh yeah, you can still do business.
what does that limit you? What's the
You can do
limitation?
business. You just can't do business with the DoD.
Right.
So if, a lot of companies base it on their, how much of their workload or how much of their business percentage is based on DoD
Yeah.
work or from a contractor or subcontractor.
Right.
If it's 1%, 2, 3, 5%, you need to take a good hard look and say, is it worth putting
that
a
much
lot
money
of money into?
Yeah, so they can still be in business and do all well, but they just can't do DoD work. All right,
Right.
so
And
any ballpark figures? I realize this probably varies widely depending on the size of the company and everything, but
right.
any ballpark sense of how much change we're talking about here?
There's no official word from the DoD on this, but there are some guesses out there. So for NIST 800-171 compliance, depending on your current cybersecurity program that you currently have and how involved it is, I've seen it for NIST. I've seen it from 15,000 to 60,000.
Okay, that's just for NIST.
Just for NIST.
Okay.
CMMC, and again, depending on if you're NIST compliant. If you are not NIST compliant, you're going to do them together. You're talking, it could be over 200K. Probably easy to become CMMC certified because you're also becoming NIST or NIST compliant.
Why the 3x? I'm curious. Why? How come it's going to cost you maybe 3x as much?
Well, one of the main reasons is with CMMC, you'll want to hire a registered practitioner organization to guide you through the process.
Okay.
And to do the documentation for you. The other is a C3PAO.
Yeah.
There's only 54, and they can name their own price. It's really going to be it. I can imagine over 100K just for the assessment.
Yeah.
The final assessment.
Right. Okay. Okay. So, that's helpful. That's helpful. All that stuff I think gives everybody a pretty good sense of what we're talking about here with CMMC 2.0 and NIST.
Yeah.
NIST, I always forget the numbers, 800-171. So, all right. So your company, Bluestreak Compliance, your division of your company, which is Bluestreak Compliance, you've already mentioned you're a registered practitioner. Can you give just a very brief summary of what it is? What do you guys bring to the table?
Yeah.
What do you offer?
A registered practitioner organization, again, has gone through and they've been certified by the Cyber Accreditation Board or CMMC accreditation body. I'm sorry.
Yep.
Yeah. So a registered practitioner organization or an RPO, they work with and hire RPs, which are registered practitioners,
Okay.
or RPAs, which are registered practitioner advanced. I happen to be an RPA.
Okay.
And we've gone through all the training that we need to have, that the cyber AB says, okay, you are qualified to do this.
Yeah.
So, we can do, when I quote a job, I usually quote it two different ways. One is just guiding you through the process. So
Yeah.
you're going to do all the heavy lifting. I can supply you with templates and things like that for your documentation and guide you through each step. You do all the heavy lifting, or I can quote it to where we manage the whole process. We do all your documentation for you.
Yeah.
Your team will have to be involved in the implementation process.
Sure. Yeah.
And that's both ways. But yeah, we normally quote it two different ways, and they choose which one they want that way based on their
Right.
budget and things like that.
But it sounds like you, as we kind of mentioned earlier, you got what you're bringing to the table is the ability to get that company from where they are now, wherever they self-assessed, let's just say, to start with, up to the point where they can bring in one of the third-party auditors and actually have a reasonable shot at
Yes,
passing the CMMC 2.0
correct,
assessment, right? Yeah.
correct.
Okay.
And it's going to take a lot of input from the customer or from the companies too, because you're going to have at least one or two full-time employees doing nothing but this.
Yeah. Okay. So
Yep.
you mean you got to build that into the cost,
You got
which
to
is
build that into it, which
another old
that's what I tell people when we say, we can quote it either guiding you or leading the project.
Yeah.
It's not as much work if I was leading the project, but if I'm not leading the project, you're going to need a team of people to do
Yeah.
this. It's a
Yeah.
lot of work.
I'm not sure this is an easy answer to this question, but Joe, can you give just a list of, I don't know, top 3 to 4, 4 to 5 areas that a company needs to look at when they start doing the NIST CMMC checklist? I mean, where do you see most companies falling down, or just what are the areas that they need to be aware of?
Well, a lot of the smaller companies, they do not have a robust cybersecurity program. That is going to be a big pitfall. That's going to be, a big jump for them. Not just the work that they have to put into it, but the expense. And a lot of small companies just can't afford that.
So, for example, like what does that program involve? I mean, is it like, okay, best practices for handling emails, where we store? I mean, I know you say everything, and it probably goes like this, but what are some of those things?
Some of the things are making sure that your network is totally secure and locked down.
Okay.
Firewalls,
Yep.
along with that, you're gonna need like endpoint protection on all your devices, mobile
Okay.
device manager. You're gonna have to track every device that has access or could have access to CUI.
All right.
You have to have a full inventory of that. So your IT system has to be locked down.
Yep.
Now this also includes your facility. It also includes physical security. So that's talking
Okay.
about your door locks. That's
Huh.
talking about your alarm systems, things that are going to protect CUI from getting out.
Right.
Camera
Right.
systems, your server rooms have to be locked down. So it's a lot of physical security too.
Huh. Interesting. Okay. As well as the protocols for how you handle emails and
Yes.
and how data is transferred, where it's stored,
Yes.
backups, I assume, stuff like that. Yeah.
And you need to have a policy and a procedure for each one of those. Has to be fully documented every step of the way.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds like fun, Joe.
It is. I enjoy it, but it's a lot of work.
Good.
It's a lot of work, but
I'm glad somebody enjoys it. I think I'd be swinging from a rope somewhere,
I eat, sleep, and drink it.
Well, that's good. That's good. I appreciate it. Well, the columns and things that you've written for our publication have been helpful to people I know, and so I think hopefully this podcast will also be helpful to them. But do you know, by the way, for those listening who might be attending Furnaces North America, do you know when your talk is?
Yeah, it's going to be on the 16th at 8:50 a.m.
8:50. I think the 16th is the last day.
Yes.
If I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's in room 222.
All right. Well, there you
At
go. We can
8:50.
put that up on the screen. So 8:50 on the 16th in room 222, and we'll make sure we get the right title put up there as well.
Okay,
So,
good.
all right, Joe. So I think that's good. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time. Yeah, we'll look forward to more of your input. We'll put up on the screen, hopefully now, contact information for Joe. Also, if you want to get that acronym sheet, that's cybersecurity acronyms, we'll put the URL up on the screen where people can get that. So, thanks everyone for listening. Really appreciate it. We want to thank our sponsor, Bluestreak Throughput Consulting. As we've just been discussing, they are award-winning providers of quality management systems and manufacturing execution systems. But what we've been talking about specifically is their CMMC 2.0 registered practitioner organization capabilities. So we've been talking about that a good bit. But again, you can find out more about the sponsor by going to go-bluestreak.com, which again, hopefully will be on the screen right now. If you're listening on some sort of a podcast app, if you wouldn't mind, please go and give us a 5-star review. Only the very best reviews. We only like those. Or like us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, wherever you listen, Podbean, which I don't even know where that is, but if you're on one of those, give us a good rating, especially on the Apple podcast. That's very helpful. That helps other people find us. And let us know if you'd like to hear a specific topic on a future episode of Heat Treat Radio. More than happy to do that. You can send that idea of what you would like to hear us cover to me at doug@heattreattoday.com. And also, please don't forget about Heat Treat Boot Camp coming up September 23 to 25 in Pittsburgh, where you can get 2+ years of industry knowledge crammed in your head quickly in about 2 days. You can find out more about that at heattreatbootcamp.com. So this and every other episode of Heat Treat Radio is a sole property of Heat Treat Today and may not be reproduced in part or in whole without advance written permission from Heat Treat Today. Once again, thanks for listening. I'm your host, Doug Glenn. Have a great day.